Welcome to From Betrayal to Breakthrough. I'm Dr. Debbie Silber, and today's guest is Laurie James. Laurie is a mother, divorcee, recovering caregiver turned author, somatic relationship coach, and podcaster. Now, Laurie also helps women divorce, heal, and date differently in midlife. She blends her coaching and somatic training to help her clients develop a better relationship with their bodies and nervous system. Doing so allows them to find the inner freedom to experience more happiness, joy, and create the life they desire. So today we're diving into a deeply moving conversation with author and somatic practitioner Laurie James. Laurie's story spans childhood trauma, life-altering betrayals in marriage, and a profound journey into somatic healing. You'll hear how nervous system dysregulation manifested in her body for decades, the pivotal moments that brought her to her knees, and somatic tools that finally helped her heal. Whether you've experienced betrayal, live with chronic anxiety, or simply want to feel safer and more grounded in your body, this episode is for you. Here we go. Okay, everybody, I'm with Laurie James today, and I'm bringing her on because, of course, she has a story around betrayal, or two or three, and she has some very interesting ways to help us heal. So welcome, Laurie.
Thank you, Debbie, for having me. I'm so excited to be here, and I so enjoyed the podcast that we did together on my podcast, which has been a huge hit with my listeners. So thank you. I just want to take a moment and thank you. I think it's been very, very helpful for my listeners as well.
I'm so glad. I'm so glad. So, so of course, everybody wants to know, well, what's your story? And then eventually, I'm sure it's going to lead to the work you're doing now.
Yes.
And then we'll tie it all up. So let's let's start there if we can.
Absolutely. So, first and foremost, I'm a mother of four beautiful, amazing daughters who are now all grown. I am a divorcee, and I call myself a recovering caregiver because I cared for my elderly parents for 14 and a half years, which is also, I wrote a book about it, about the sandwich generation that was published about 4 years ago. But I think the important piece for this conversation is and how I got into the somatic experiencing world, the somatic healing world is at the end of my marriage, which there was a huge betrayal in the marriage, actually a couple, two very large ones, couple little earthquakes in there along the way too, as always. But I felt very ill, and the doctors could not figure out what was wrong with me. I was in the hospital twice within 2 days, and they ran every test in the book. The first time I left the hospital, I literally left with a walker, and I'm a very healthy. Now I'm 60. This happened about 7 years ago, but very healthy, not on any medications, very active, big skier, big hiker, walker, exerciser. Um, but and they ran every test, and I had these hot patches and they eventually diagnosed me with what's called migrating arthritis and an unnamed virus. Um, I believe that this was chronic dysregulation of my nervous system for years.
And before we go further, I want to know everybody I'm sure wants to know where you came from. Like where for something to be going on for years, right? Where does the nervous system get regulated from? What type of situations or what belief systems or whatever? There could be so many things. So was there something like tell us a story, your story, or
well,
how we know where
there were several things, but to make it simple, I'm adopted. So I came into a family. I was adopted at birth, but I came into a family and I never really felt like I belonged in my family. There was, I didn't feel safe in my home all the time because my oldest brother physically and sexually abused me. So there was that. I didn't always feel like my parents understood what was going on and protected me in the way that I needed protection from somebody who was very threatening to me, who was 4 years older, larger, obviously larger than me. He was adopted from a separate family, so there was a lot of issues that he had. He had what we would call now learning disabilities, some dyslexia, had a lot of anger.
Did your parents know what was happening?
They they were aware to some level. My dad was the type of person that would stick his head in the sand. He was the ostrich. He was also another child for my mother. So my mother was trying to hold it together. She was a teacher. She was working full time, as a teacher. She was doing as much as she could back in the late 60s, early 70s. They didn't have the knowledge then that they do now.
So how did
They
you process that? So what did you make that mean?
Very good question. I I don't know that I really made meaning to it until later on in life when I really started doing more introspective work that was in my 40s and that I write about in my book. But um, I, I made it eventually mean in my body, made it mean that I'm not worthy, that I don't belong. And so I was for most of my life constantly looking for acceptance, and I was constantly looking for um there's that book that we read to our kids, is your mama a llama? Are you my mother? Are you my mother? Are you my mother? Later on, obviously that's not your mother, but it is, who do I attach to? Will you love me? Will you love me? Will you love me? And what does love look like? I didn't have the models, healthy models. And so I went into a lot of unhealthy relationships and I ended up in a unhealthy marriage.
And that's so, it's so common when things happen, in our childhood and we don't know what to make of it. And we just assume, well, it must be us. It must be me. I'm not
Right.
lovable, worthy, deserving, all of
As
these things.
children, that's what we do. We internalize it. And it really, again, wasn't until I was in my 40s that I really started doing that work. And I've done the gamut. I mean, I've been on my own healing journey for over 15 years, and it's going to continue, right?
And
Go
yeah,
ahead.
and I totally want to get there. Did you notice any physical symptoms? Like where, because usually it's the mental and emotional of I'm just not feeling good in my own body. I'm not feeling well in my own body. Were there any other symptoms that you had?
Oh, yeah. That's a really great question because when I was in a teenager, and not too far after some sexual abuse happened, I had chronic stomach issues.
Mm.
Chronic stomach issues. They couldn't figure out. They finally said I had a ulcer, right? But it was my stomach I was living in a dysregulated state. I was up in my sympathetic nervous system because I was always concerned and aware and hyper vigilant about, am I safe? Is my brother going to come into the room? Like, if I go on this, if my parents leave and we're home alone, is something going to happen? Do I need to leave? Do I need to go to a friend's house? Do I need to go to the park down the street? What can I do to keep myself safe? So I was hyper vigilant and I didn't know how dysregulated and how much anxiety I was living with because I was very good at overriding it until I healed through the somatic work that I did after I left my
Right.
marriage.
And it's so common to have gut issues. 45% of everybody betrayed has a gut issue. I mean, that's just classic. So the gut issues, the hypervigilance, man, that's all so common. And it becomes our new normal. And we think, okay, well, this is just who I am and what's
Yeah.
going on. And meanwhile, it's completely created because of living in this sort of toxic soup.
Yeah.
So now here you are. You're growing up, so now you're going to, let's say, the teenage years and young adult years. Did the physical symptoms stay? Did other things change?
No, I think the physical symptoms, so I was able to heal a lot of my gut
Mhm.
issues. And I've been a person who I was probably on the early side of taking out ultra processed foods from my diet and my kids' diet, and eating more whole foods versus processed foods.
Mhm.
Mostly because I had four daughters and I didn't want them to have body image. And so I just thought if they listened to their body and ate healthy foods and stopped eating when they were full, they would they wouldn't have the chronic up and down dieting issues. And that worked. And so I ate that way too. And I learned also that I felt better. That was one of the ways I was able to regulate my nervous system. Um, and there were times in my marriage that I did feel safe, and there were aspects of my marriage I did feel safe. I married the person that I married, even though I thought I was marrying somebody different, because there was a lot of financial. My mom was always worried about money, and even though she worked, but my dad, he wasn't a businessman. He was a craftsman. So I focused on marrying somebody who I thought would provide more financial security, right? Which he did. And he was a great provider, but there was no emotional security there, which mimicked the combination of my mom and my dad.
Mm. And usually we choose these people because there's a lesson to learn. There's
Yes.
something to learn there. So at what point did you kind of say, "Uh-oh, this is I'm in this scenario that isn't giving me what I want," and what
Yeah.
symptoms were showing up and what happened next?
Well, so it was the second betrayal that really hit me. The first one is I shared a little bit before we hit record is as I said, I'm adopted, and my ex-husband found my birth mother without my consent
Mm.
and made contact with her, which was a huge, huge issue for us. And I don't know that I ever really got over it, but I didn't process things the way that I might process that now.
And
But
what was
later,
the reason? Was it supposed to be a surprise for you, or was the intention behind it?
well, he said the intention was, well, we have children because I had two children at that time, two daughters. My third pregnancy was a set of identical twins. But he said, well, why wouldn't you want to know your medical information? We have two children. And I said, and this was over 25 years ago, but I said, modern medicine is advanced enough that if there's any medical issue, that I can find it. And when you're talking about, it's such a personal decision.
Right,
And it was such a violation of my trust,
right.
which is the definition of betrayal, right? But I didn't really have words for it. And one of the mistakes we made is we went to a therapist who basically made me feel like it was my fault for what happened, that I should let this go,
Mm.
that he had the right to do it,
Right. So just
which
so
just
everybody understands,
layered on what I was feeling and experiencing.
right. So just so everybody understands, because I always try to get in the minds and hearts of my audience. So you had this conversation that if you need to know, you'll find out whatever you need to know. And then after that, that was when your husband found your birth parents. That's what you're saying. So it was like you already had the conversation.
Yeah, I had
The
told him several times, I do not want to find my birth parents.
okay.
I do not want to open Pandora's box. I was not prepared to do that.
Right.
At the time this happened, I had a 1-year old and a 3-year old, and I was working part-time.
Mm.
And there's many reasons for it. I didn't want to betray. I felt like on some levels it was a betrayal to my adopted mother and
Right.
adopted parents who had raised me.
Yeah.
That somehow maybe she thought that I was going to replace her in some way, which was not the case. Um,
And,
so
and either
and
way,
he never
whatever.
truly apologized. Like I could have maybe accepted it if he would have said, I can see where this would be so upsetting. I'm sorry I did this. He
Right.
was never able to utter those words.
Right. So no ownership, no taking responsibility, nothing. Okay.
No.
So now so he finds your birth parents, and was there a meeting or
So I felt guilty. And so out of guilt, I did meet her. I
okay.
was the only child that she ever had. So she wanted to have a relationship with me. I was not ready to have a relationship with her. And I told her, meanwhile, it's layered and I'm pissed at my
Sure,
ex-husband,
sure.
which doesn't make a very happy home life for probably a couple years.
Mm.
But I do meet her. She's a lovely woman. My adopted mother meets her. That was a very nice encounter, but it was like meeting my long lost aunt
Mm.
for me personally,
Right.
that I'd always known about and heard about, but never really had met. And this all happened in my 30s.
Yeah. So
And I'm
now how is your
60 now.
body responding to all of this? Because at some point the somatic stuff is going to make a whole lot of sense.
Oh yeah, just
Why you
major
need
dysregulation in my body. I'm not sleeping, I'm not eating, I'm in turmoil inside.
it. Mhm.
It just feels like, you talk about that. It's like throwing a bunch of ingredients in a blender and it's just swirling and swirling and none of them is really getting chopped up and processed.
Right.
It's just churning. Just churning, churning, churning. Um, I eventually am able to put it aside. I go on to have two more. We get pregnant again. I have my twins. Fast forward, then, my ex-husband traveled a lot. He worked a lot, and we kind of divided and conquered. And I thought, okay, we're dividing and conquering. And as the kids got older, we get two kids out of the house. They're in college, my twins. I'm kind of like starting to figure out what I want to do with my life. Still caring for my elderly parents at this point, have two kids at home, but starting to think of like I I'm not a, I need purpose in my life.
Right.
That's just the type of person I am. So I'm trying to figure out what that is, whether it's, working in a nonprofit or maybe running a nonprofit or doing some coaching or writing. And that's when I started writing my book. But what happened during that time is there was a financial betrayal. That was huge.
Mm.
And what that was is he had a family member, his aunt and uncle had offered to pay for our kids' college education,
Mhm.
which is a huge, incredibly beautiful gift,
Sure.
right? So many people, especially with four kids. Um, but instead of the uncle putting the money in the college education accounts, he just gave my ex-husband and his brother a pot of money.
Mhm.
And at this point, we've been married for 18, 19 years. And I kept asking him after both his aunt and uncle had passed away, what are we going to do with this money? How are we going to handle this? What are we going to do with this money? I
Mhm.
don't know. I can't think about it. I've got too much going on. Da, 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 da. Kept avoiding, avoiding. We go in to talk to a family law attorney to update our will and trust,
Mhm.
which happens to be the same lawyer who was handling his aunt and uncle's estate.
Okay.
And so I think it's pretty benign. And we're sitting there, and the lawyer says, so, Paul, have you decided to keep your inheritance separate? And I just like disassociated from my body. I left my body. I was like, what is happening right now?
And did you know at that moment that he was talking about the money for
I knew what he was talking about.
okay.
I knew, even though I had asked him multiple times, I knew exactly what he was talking about. And I was like, are you effing kidding me?
Mhm.
Like, and I made it about me. Have you not seen everything that I have done for this family? Have you not seen how I've showed up for
Mm.
your side of the family? Have you not seen how I've cared for our children? And it took me a long time, 5.5 years of talk therapy to really understand. And that also sent me on a very spiritual journey, and introspective journey. And there was also things going on in my personal life with caring for my parents and crazy ass caregivers.
And so basically, as far as the kids go, though, that money was not available for the kids for their school
No, I
anymore.
made sure that it was.
Okay,
So that then sent us into a legal process of making sure that we put a legal document together that said, if in the event that we get divorced, you will pay for the kids' college
I
education.
see. Okay, so at least as crazy as all the other things are, that wasn't another thing you needed to deal with. That money that was put aside for them was in fact,
Yes, but I had to fight for it.
yeah. Okay,
I had to fight for it. Otherwise, because my ex-husband's brother did not pay for his kids' college education fully with his ex-wife. He made his ex-wife pay for it. I was like, that's not happening here.
okay.
And that was so hard for me to do, to
What part of
stand
that
up
was
for
hard to do? Was
myself.
it the boundaries? The
Well, it was the fact that the person that I thought that I was my partner, that I loved and trusted and would have done anything for,
Mm,
was not willing to do that for me and my kids.
mm, right,
And it
right.
was mostly about me. It wasn't about the kids. It was about me and it took me a long time to understand that he had trust issues
Hmm.
from his childhood that he had not processed. This didn't have anything to do with me. And that took a really, really long time to get there.
And that's the nature of betrayal, where, even though it happens to us, it's not about us, but we do make it mean that, we make it about us.
But how can
And
we not? Like
right,
you enter into a marriage, when we're talking about marriage, when you enter into a marriage, you are making a commitment, and you think that the other person is making the same commitment as you when you take those vows.
right.
But it's not always the case because our past and the adaptations and our past experience will dictate how somebody shows up in the present.
Right. All of it. Right. And then we're looking for confirming evidence to support whatever belief we're creating. So it's just more and more evidence to support our
Yeah.
case. So now I'm sure your nervous system, if it wasn't completely dysregulated, now it is. It's everything
Oh,
is completely heightened. Tell us about where the somatic experiencing comes
yeah.
in and what did that do?
Yeah. Thank you. So then fast forwarding after my marriage, I fell ill. I had taken on I was the one that left the house. I was the one that asked for the divorce. I took on too much. I was saying yes
Mhm.
to too much. I started dating probably too soon, because of my anxious attachment style. I needed to attach, which comes from my very early ages of my adoption of not having that attachment. I was saying yes to friends, and my body was overwhelmed because the simple definition of trauma is too much too soon, too much too fast, too much for too long, or too little for too long,
Mm, mm.
right? And so that covers that so much,
I can just see everybody right now. They're like, yep, yep, yep. They
right?
can
And
check off all
here's
of
the
that.
thing, divorce is the second most stressful or dysregulating thing you can do to yourself.
Right.
Moving is in the top 5 or 10.
Mhm.
Right? So I had done two. And then shortly after my divorce was final, I had made the largest purchase I have ever made, which was I bought a house because the perfect house came up too soon.
Mm.
Right? But it's like, how do you say no? So, and I just remember almost having a panic attack before putting a huge amount of money down on a house. And I'd been married for 26 years, together 28. We'd made decisions together. And that was huge too. And literally 2 days after I closed escrow on my house is when I landed in the hospital. My body, I knew I was stressed. And I even told a friend, I'm stressed, and I had a lot of good things going on, but I didn't know how to back out of it. But my body did, and
Mhm.
it shut down.
And sometimes I feel like I mean, the body's so brilliant. It's doing that to force us to slow down. Like I
Yeah.
remember having
Oh,
foot
yeah.
surgery, and it's almost like energetically, it was impossible for me to move. And
Hmm.
isn't that a great time to start thinking, right? So it's beautiful how the body just forces us to just
Yeah. But
decide
see
what we need.
how,
Yeah.
right. And I was a person, even though at that point I was able to process some of my emotions, and I would sit on the couch before this all happened as I was going through my divorce and cry um and all of that. But I hadn't done enough of the body-based healing, because once I was well enough, which it took me I couldn't drive. I mean, I ended up back in the hospital a second time. I lost 14 pounds. I was severely anemic. My blood pressure was low, blah, blah, blah. My body was shutting down.
Mm.
And
So
that means I was in my dorsal vagal is what happens to you, sympathetically. My dorsal vagal, vagus nerve was shutting down because my body was saying, this is too much. You need to rest. And I did. And I took everything off my plate except for some basic things I needed to do on my house and my health. And that's what I focused on for the next 6 months. And that's when I started working with a somatic practitioner, and he was also a
And I
therapist.
just want to stop you here. For those
Yeah.
who aren't familiar with somatics, somatic body based, give us an example.
Yeah.
Share
Well,
with everybody what that means.
let me explain the definition too. So somatic is derived from the Greek word soma, which means body, and then experiencing. So literally what you want to do is experience what's happening in the body. It's that simple. It sounds so, and so for instance, if you are going to a social event and you feel a little social anxiety, instead of having that drink or pushing those feelings aside, can you just stay with the maybe a little bit of nervousness that you feel and pay attention to it? Where do you notice it in your body? And and 99.9% of the time, if you can stay with that for a minute or two, it will dissipate.
And you know what? I've even heard 17 seconds, or is that anger? One of them is 17 seconds.
It's, yeah.
But
I don't know if it's the anxiety.
yeah, but either way, you think about it. We can stay with something for life because we're doing all we can to avoid that minute or two.
Yes.
Isn't it amazing? Like, I just want everybody to understand that math. If we give it that uncomfortable yes, minute or two, it can free us. Sometimes it just needs to be seen, felt, acknowledged, and then it can
Yeah.
leave. So if we're
Yeah.
willing to do that, we don't have to have it plague us for years.
Yeah. Yeah. Notice it and nourish it,
Now, when you
right?
say nourish it, what does that mean?
Well, so nourishing is tending to it and spending time with it, and just like and being curious about it, of what am I noticing right now? And because what happens in our nervous system is, if you're feeling anxiety in the present moment about, let's take the social interaction, social event as an example. There was probably a social event in the past that you felt uncomfortable for some reason, and you didn't complete that fight, flight, or freeze process of that anxiety coming up in your body. You didn't allow your body to complete that and let that energy discharge out of your nervous system, so it's showing up in the present moment. When we can stay with it and nourish it, and just like, and be curious of, I'm noticing I'm feeling a little not that I am anxious. I'm noticing I'm feeling a little anxiety right now. Become more of the observer of it. Where is that coming from? And is there something that I can do right now in this moment to ease my anxiety?
Mm.
Maybe I need to go for a walk around the block before I go into that party. Maybe I just need to sit here and feel the chair or the car seat underneath me
And can you give
and
us?
drop into the body and out of the head. Because what happens is 80%, before you go on, 80% of our sensory information travels from our body to our brain. Only 20% travels from our brain down to our body. But so we're afferent. The senses come up from our nervous system, and then our minds then reinforce it, right?
Right.
So then that thought, and then it keeps us in dysregulation, all of the thoughts. So that's the looping, that's the I can't stop thinking about this, right? So when we can ground ourselves and stabilize our nervous system and regulate it, is when then we can come out of that dysregulated state, complete that fight, flight, or freeze response.
Right. So this way we get out of the head, get it back into the body to release it from the body. As
Yeah.
we're winding down, can you give us a few examples of different body-based practices
Yeah,
that people can
yeah.
try?
So the one that we often start with, or that I often start with, is okay. So there's two different pieces. One, um, I often help my clients put together what we call a self-regulating toolbox. So those are things that we can do externally. Whether if we have a lot of energy, maybe we go for a walk, we go to the gym and we work out to help regulate our nervous system, or whether it's a bubble bath or connecting with a friend. I mean, community is so important, dancing, writing, journaling. But so those are all like self-regulating items that I encourage people to develop a list of that help regulate your nervous system, because everybody's different and everybody's nervous system is different. But a lot of things that I do when I'm first working with a client is typically we want to stabilize the nervous system first.
Mhm.
So one of the easiest things to do is, as we're even just sitting here or somebody's listening to the podcast right now, take a moment and just see if you can sit down or lay down on the bed and just notice where your body is making contact with the chair or whatever you're sitting or lying on. Notice where your feet are touching the floor. And then as you do this, notice if anything changes in your body. Notice if any part of your body that is tense might be relaxing. The things we look for is a natural deep breath or a softening somewhere in the body,
Mhm. Is
even a
there so
yawn.
right,
And if somebody can't do that, and then notice any sensations, because sensations, when we check in, so sensations are the language of the nervous system.
right. So we're
So,
looking for a different feeling. We're looking for
yes.
a
Right.
deeper
So
breath.
that could be maybe you feel a restriction first and you feel a softness or an openness. I have a lot of tingling in my body. So I'm always noticing that. And is that tingling heightened or is it lower?
Right.
Right? That's energy moving through my body.
Yeah.
That's sometimes for some people who have been very disassociated from their body, that's hard to do, is to connect with their body and feel. So then the second one I would work with is what we call orienting. And that's just paying attention to your time and space. Where am I? Letting your eyes wander around to the room or the area that you're in. Notice maybe it's trees, the breeze blowing, the
Mhm.
trees and the leaves fluttering, noticing a picture or a plant that's very pleasing to you, noticing a piece of artwork that you bought when you were on vacation that brings you joy. And then as you do that, noticing then what's happening in the body as you do that, because that signals to your nervous system that even though whatever you're thinking about or worried about or that's happening is scary and is dysregulating your nervous system, in this moment right now, I am safe.
Right. And I think that's so important because from the big traumatic experiences to the little daily nervous anxiety provoking experiences, we need to release all of this excess energy that doesn't
Yeah.
serve us within the body. And somatics is a beautiful way to do that. Laurie,
Yeah.
where do we go to learn more about you and the great work you do?
Yeah, thank you. So you can find me at lauriejames.com, Laurie, middle initial E, James. I have a podcast called Confessions of a Free Bird that's all about midlife and transitions. And I always try and put a spin of the somatic work I do in those conversations. And I also drop solo. And then you can find me on Instagram, and I'll give you all of those to put in the show
And
notes.
they'll be in the show notes for sure. Laurie, thank you so much. Somatics is such a somatic experiencing. It's such an important part of
Yeah.
healing, and it's so often neglected. So I'm
Yeah,
glad
yeah. It's,
you
I mean, in my opinion,
sponsor it.
it's really the foundation of healing. So, and thank you for all the work that you're doing. Beautiful. We need more people out there doing this kind of work. So,
There we go. All right, everybody. Well, that's a wrap. Laurie, thank you so much for your wisdom and all you shared with us today.
thank you.
What a powerful reminder that healing isn't just about talking through your pain, it's about releasing it from our bodies. Stay in touch with Laurie by going to lauriejames.com, and we'll have all of her information in the show notes at thepbtinstitute.com/podcast. Here's my biggest takeaway. Laurie's story is proof that no matter how long you've been carrying the weight of betrayal or trauma, it's possible to regulate your nervous system and reclaim the health, peace, and joy that you deserve. If today's conversation resonated with you, I encourage you to explore somatic practices Laurie shared and begin building your own self-regulation toolbox. Of course, we're here to help you too. Head over to the PBT, as in post-betrayal transformation, thepbtinstitute.com, and let's regulate your nervous system so that you can heal physically, mentally, and emotionally. You've got your next chapter waiting, and we'd be honored to help you get there. Thanks for listening. Can't wait to be with you next time, and here's to your breakthrough.